I used to believe that loyalty was measured by how much you could give away before there was nothing left of you. I thought love meant sacrifice, and sacrifice meant silence. That belief stayed with me for most of my life, right up until the night my own sister tried to erase me completely. That was the moment everything cracked open, and I finally understood that the weight I had been carrying was never mine to begin with. My name is Leela Hartley, I am 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the one people rely on when things fall apart. Fixing problems is not just what I do, it is who I am. I work as a private investigator, which means my entire life revolves around reading between the lines, noticing what people try to hide, and understanding the truth behind carefully crafted lies. I can hear it in a voice when someone shifts their tone just slightly, or see it in their posture when their story does not quite match their reality. I have built my career on uncovering truths that others desperately want buried. But somehow, in the middle of all that, I failed to see the truth inside my own home. Growing up, I was the dependable one, the firstborn daughter who stepped in whenever things went wrong. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone argued, I mediated. If there was a problem no one wanted to deal with, it somehow became mine. My parents never called it pressure, they called it strength. They praised me constantly for being reliable, for never complaining, for always finding a solution. What they never said out loud, but made painfully clear over time, was that I was the one expected to sacrifice without question. That role slowly wrapped itself around my identity like a second skin. I carried it into adulthood without even realizing how much of my life was being shaped by it. Saying yes became automatic, putting myself last became normal. I told myself that this was what love looked like. 7 years ago, my younger sister Emily got accepted into medical school. It should have been one of the happiest moments in our family, and on the surface it was. There were celebrations, hugs, and proud smiles, but beneath all of that, there was an unspoken expectation quietly taking shape. Medical school was expensive, the tuition alone was overwhelming, and that did not include rent, books, exams, and everything else that came with it. My parents talked about it as a shared responsibility, a family effort, but the reality was much simpler than the words they used. I was the one who would make it happen. I took on more cases, worked longer hours, and pushed myself past exhaustion just to keep up with the financial demands. I cut corners in my own life without hesitation. I ate cheap meals, delayed repairs on my car even when it started making sounds that worried me, and turned down opportunities I had worked hard for because there was always something Emily needed more urgently. Every payment I made felt like an investment in her future, and I convinced myself that it was worth it because family always came first. At home, my efforts were acknowledged, but never questioned. My parents would tell me how proud they were, how strong I was, how dependable I had become, but they never once asked if I was tired. They never asked if I needed help. They never asked if I even wanted to keep going. Their praise became a quiet permission for them to keep leaning on me, and I accepted it because I believed that was love. Everything began to shift one evening in my mother's kitchen. I was standing at the counter chopping onions, my eyes stinging, though not entirely from the sharp smell. The exhaustion I had been carrying for years felt heavier than usual that night. The house smelled warm and familiar, filled with the comforting scent of dinner, but something about the air felt off, like a storm building in the distance. That was when Emily walked in. She had her white coat draped over her arm, crisp and clean, like a symbol of everything she had worked for and everything I had helped her achieve. She carried it like a trophy, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of pride, but it did not last. My mother spoke without looking up from the stove. Her voice was calm, almost casual, as if she were discussing something routine. She mentioned that Emily's ceremony was the next day and told me I would be driving her downtown. I started to respond, already planning to tell her I had cleared my schedule, but Emily cut me off before I could finish. She did not even look at me when she spoke. She simply told me to make sure I was on time, her tone sharp enough to sting. I paused, the knife still in my hand, and reminded her gently that I had never missed anything important. That was when she finally looked at me, and the expression on her face was not one of appreciation or warmth. It was cold, almost dismissive. She said I missed more than I realized, and that I just covered it up with money. The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I could not even process them. Before I had a chance to respond, my mother stepped in, her voice slipping into the silence like it had been waiting for the right moment. She said that my role was to sacrifice, that it was simply my place in the family. I did not drop the knife, I did not raise my voice, but something inside me shifted in a way I could not ignore. It felt like the ground beneath me had tilted just slightly, enough to make everything feel off balance. Emily met my eyes again and told me to just let her have her moment. I said nothing after that, I finished chopping the onions, forcing myself to believe that it was just stress, just another small moment that would pass like so many others had before. But it did not pass. 3 days later, my grandfather passed away. His name was Henry, and he had always been the one person in my family who treated me with quiet kindness, without expectations or conditions. Losing him felt like losing the only place where I had ever truly been seen. Grief should have been the center of those days, but it was quickly overshadowed by logistics, paperwork, and discussions about what came next. In our family group chat, Emily casually suggested delaying the inheritance hearing so it would not interfere with her work. My mother asked me to handle the legal filings, and my father reminded us that everyone needed to make sacrifices. Without hesitation, I agreed. I handled everything, just like I always did. I spoke to lawyers, organized documents, and made sure every detail was taken care of, even while I was still trying to process the loss of someone who had meant so much to me. 2 weeks after the funeral, I thought things were beginning to settle. I was wrong. One afternoon, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, a deputy handed me a stack of legal papers that made my hands go cold. Emily was contesting the will. At first, I thought there had to be some kind of mistake, but as I read through the documents, the reality became impossible to ignore. She was not just contesting the will, she was accusing me. According to her claim, the financial support I had given her over the years was not generosity. It was manipulation. She accused me of controlling her, of influencing our grandfather, and of using money as leverage to secure a better position for myself. I stood there in my doorway, reading those words, feeling like I had stepped into someone else's life. The will was read a few days later in a quiet conference room, with rain tapping steadily against the windows. My grandfather had not been wealthy, but what he left behind still mattered. There was a fully paid house, a small lake cabin, his old watch, and a modest investment account. The distribution was simple, but it was enough to change everything. The cabin was left to both Emily and me, shared equally. The house was left to me, along with the watch, and the investment account was divided in a way that favored me slightly. I felt the shift in the room before anyone spoke. My mother's smile tightened, and the air grew heavy with tension. Then the lawyer handed me a letter from my grandfather. I opened it carefully, my hand steady despite everything, and inside there was only one line. It said it was meant for the one who paid the debts he never owed. Those words settled into me in a way I cannot fully explain. It felt like recognition, something I had never received while he was alive. Later, in the parking lot, my mother pulled me aside and told me to be reasonable. I understood immediately what she meant. She wanted me to give something up. That night, Emily called me. Her voice was calm, almost a calm, like she had rehearsed every word. She told me to sign over my share of the house. Said it would be easier that way, cleaner for everyone. When I asked what she was offering, she brushed it off and told me we would figure it out later. Then she told me to do the right thing, as if she had always been the one who decided what that meant. For the first time in years, I pushed back. I told her I wanted the house, and that I was not going to give it up. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her tone had changed completely. She said I was too focused on rules because I did not understand what love really meant. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. 2 weeks later, the situation escalated. The legal papers that arrived this time were far worse. Her claims had expanded into serious accusations, including coercion and undue influence. She even suggested that our grandfather had not been in the right state of mind when he made his decisions. Attached to the documents were photos of me leaving his house, screenshots of messages I had sent, and records of every payment I had ever made. Each piece of evidence had been twisted just enough to change its meaning. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped into focus. I stopped reacting like a sister, and I started thinking like an investigator. I opened my safe and began gathering everything I had kept over the years. Bank records, receipts, loan statements, payment confirmations. Every detail of the support I had given her was documented. It was all there, a clear timeline that could not be rewritten. Then I found something else. A sealed envelope in my grandfather's desk, addressed to Emily but never opened. On the morning of the hearing, I wore the same black suit I had worn to his funeral. I met my lawyer outside the courthouse, calm in a way I had not expected. Inside, Emily's lawyer presented her case with confidence, laying out each accusation as if it were undeniable truth. He framed every piece of evidence to make me look calculating and manipulative. When it was our turn, my lawyer asked me one simple question. Where had my money gone over the past 7 years? I answered honestly. I said it went to my sister because I believed in her. Then I stepped forward and placed my evidence on the desk. Every payment, every detail, every record was there, impossible to misinterpret. Finally, I presented the sealed envelope. The judge allowed it to be opened. As Emily read it, the color drained from her face. Then came the final piece. Messages between her and our mother, revealing everything. They talked about keeping loans in my name, using guilt to control me, and threatening legal action if I did not comply. When the judge asked if she denied writing them, she could not. The truth settled into the room like a weight. The case unraveled quickly after that. By the time we stepped into the hallway, she had withdrawn her claims. In the end, I kept the house, I kept the watch, and I paid off the remaining debts tied to my name. That night, I sat alone on my porch, the world quiet around me. I wound my grandfather's watch slowly, listening to its steady ticking. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to say something I had avoided for years. I said no, and it felt like closing a door that should have been locked a long time ago.